Okay.
Ted, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's YouTube's a it's
Hi
a
guys.
hey Dan.
Hey, Dan.
You know,
Um, YouTube's an interesting monster. Like I don't even know what how
So I have a question for you YouTubers.
uh
Do you how many of you active YouTubers actually spend a lot of time reading the comments?
um I don't get many comments, so I do read them because they come in so infrequently that they're a bit of a curiosity. Um,
Okay.
I do on Instagram. I read every one of them, and I try to give every one of them a little heart of recognition, just so people know that I've read them. Um,
Oh, that's sweet.
but mostly just because, um, like so far I haven't had any problem with comments on Instagram. I've had one problem recently, and that all resolved, and I've gone back to having zero problems. So one problem in 7 years is okay. So, but
I was speaking to Grace about that recently when she was thinking about starting to do some shorts on YouTube.
yeah,
And my comment was, it's a very different world over there as
yeah,
opposed to the Instagram comment section. Um, Once you get a channel that's rolling, you see a lot of strange. You get input that you did not expect, and some of it's violent,
yeah,
hostile, like a lot more trolling and vicious stuff too. So you have to be kind of prepared for that. I think
yeah.
you ran into that on one of your early videos where you were taking a neck off and someone said ruined,
I know,
destroyed,
I know.
So you have to be mentally prepared to take on that kind of stuff.
I did
As
respond to
for
that
I don't
though.
read very many comments. Yeah, I
yeah,
can't.
Ted,
I can't get through them all.
How much?
Ted, when they did the Stu Mac videos on me, I was not prepared for how angry people would be about a guy fixing fucking guitars.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The
I mean, I hesitate to say this, but I've actually had death threats, like legit, off the wall. What did you do to that, Martin? Frightening enough that maybe I should log this and make sure I keep that information about where
yeah,
it came in.
Yeah. You know that little string thing I do where I break the string off at the machine head?
Oh yeah.
People lost their minds over that. It was like I was punching an infant.
Ted, what do you
It's
think? What do you think the Venn diagram is for people that are both interested in guitars and making death threats? Like, it seems like there should be another circle in there, like especially acoustic guitars. Interested in
Well, if you think about the incidence of psychopathy and antisocial personality disorder is around 1% of the population.
yeah,
So if you get 100,000 people watching, you can kind of figure it out. There's a number of them there. There's going to be 10 in every crowd,
10
right?
in every crowd, yeah. Um,
But Evan might be happy to know that someone has actually chastised me for using clippers on my um, headstock, trimming the
Oh,
strings. I'm supposed to be snapping them off by causing metal fatigue
like
oh,
because
Evan.
that's the proper way to do it so that I won't
okay.
be injuring customers' hands. So
See
you've
if
had
you
a terrible influence on the industry. How
see
can
if
you
you can
imagine?
do it without any veiled anti-Semitism coming out on. It was insanity. It was
Yeah.
The
Sorry about that, Evan.
like, it happens.
oh, that was you, Jeremy. You're out there.
Is that Jeremy?
Yes, it was me.
He's the only one responsible for anti-Semitism on YouTube comments. Death
Before we
threats.
get rolling, Ted, I just wanted to mention that I really enjoy the history that you share about these instruments, and I know that probably takes some extra work and time to do that, but I just wanted to let you know that's really appreciated. It's an
Oh,
interesting thing you do.
Well, I appreciate your appreciation. It makes it fun for me, taking an extra 3 or 4 minutes to go over things and try and get the ducks in the row in terms of the history of them. Oftentimes I get it wrong or portions of it wrong, and I'll definitely hear about that from people who are, you know, granular studies of the guitar in question. They'll make sure that I know that that was wrong. So, but I try to make a little bit of a history lesson in every video.
I want to, what, screw it. We're going to start. Everybody, Ted Woodford. I'm tired of waiting
Hi.
since we're talking anyway. I did want to ask you about, that's the introduction, everybody. We're going. So, also, if you're not me or Ted, can you mute up? And then if this is Ted, do you mind if people interject at any point?
No problem.
Yeah, if you feel like interjecting, unmute and interject as you see fit, and then we'll just keep things rolling. But we're gonna start on time today, or maybe even a minute early. And ladies and gentlemen, the acoustic stylings of Mr. Ted Woodford. Um, so we were just talking about the research that you do, and I actually did something I haven't done for a while, which is to research a subject by watching some of their media. I never do that, but I know that you probably struggle in talking about yourself, and so I thought maybe I'd get a couple things going to talk about. And the research I find really interesting, and I was wondering, did you start doing that just as a way to have something to YouTube about, or have you always had a researcher's interest in these instruments, or did you just feel like it was part of the job and you had to kind of learn something about the instruments before you started cutting on them?
I think it was all three, really. I mean, I do have a bit of a historical streak in me. I studied art history and anthropology
Uh-huh.
growing up. So, yeah, I'm used to looking up some information. And I just thought that when presenting this stuff to the public, it would be a helpful kind of inroad into the repair, because there are people who watch my stuff, uh, not so much for the technical information, but just because I have a relaxing voice and it puts them to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I figure that if I can get them to sleep before they're actually into the repair, I'll have done my job. And then those of us who are actually into the repair, we can talk about the good stuff, the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was all three. I mean, I'm fascinated. I'm interested in history. I like to learn about the guitars I'm working on, and I think it just makes me a better repair person. Like overall, if you have that sort of information sticking around in the back of your head and you can pull it up, um, it it helps. I can't imagine doing this without being at least somewhat interested in the history of the instrument.
Yeah. Somehow I do it, but I always feel embarrassed that I, I've tried a couple times to like read a book about, what I do for a living. I'm just like, oh, so boring. I don't,
So,
And so you created a multimedia conglomerate to
based
disseminate
on
this
based on
information to
displaying
others.
how ignorant I am about what I do for a living. Fascinating, huh? That was another thing I wanted to talk to you about. You know, the a couple times since I've started, it's relaxed now since I've changed it from Ian Hates Guitars into the Luth Group, and I've taken my name off of it in some way. But there were times when at the beginning of IHG where I would be drifting off to sleep, and then I would just like bolt upright in bed, and I would think, boy, you've really put yourself out there. Like, a lot of people know stuff about you that, like, are you sure you want this kind of footprint in the zeitgeist or whatever? I don't know what it is. But did you struggle with that early on? Do you still struggle with there being that much of
I
Ted
hadn't
Woodford?
considered that to this very
Oh,
instant.
geez, I'm sorry.
I don't know. You just brought that up. People know me.
Yeah,
People might know what I do, who
yeah,
I am, the thoughts I have. Um, it wasn't a big thing to start off with because it was so accidental.
yeah,
And I think my audience to start off with was about 200 people who had similar interests. So I felt like I was in my sphere, right? But later on, yeah, I mean, people make assumptions. People will make diagnoses based on, if I appear in a video, if my face shows up, oh, you must have these medical conditions, don't you? And it's like, okay, number one, maybe, but number two, why? Why would you say that to me?
yeah,
You know, there's a certain intrusive element. There's also a bit of a voyeuristic kind of thing that you have to have, I guess,
yeah,
if you're going to do this for any length of time. Um, yeah, I don't feel unnecessarily um, like I'm not naked
yeah.
in front of the public. And I think there's still a lot of mystery. At
Uh,
least I hope.
there is.
I'm not giving it all away.
Well, we've already discussed that there are things that you will not say about your beard, so that's, you know,
Yeah, I mean, like I'll tell you that I'm not wearing underwear right now.
uh,
That's fine. That's
you
okay.
would have fit right in with this earlier conversation that we had on the way along. So, the, um, so yeah, the kind of like having yourself out there, I guess, you know, like it, it is like, I think the less you try to like present something fictitious in the world, probably the less you're concerned about that anyway. Like, I feel like maybe, maybe I'm not as honest in my Instagram posts about how things go sometimes, and so you know maybe I'm worried somebody will see through my see through my little bit of bullshit that I put out there, but I don't know. So so yeah,
Mhm. I think like imposter syndrome comes into it too, to a great extent. I think a lot of us downplay our abilities out of a kind of defensive reflex. You know,
yeah.
my wife says this all the time. Like you sort of downplay what you do. You know, you're bad talking yourself, and it's funny, but is it true? We don't know.
Well,
So
you know, it does occur to me. I mean, we can all shell out the money for a Guild of American Luthiers certificate to put on the wall, you know, but it doesn't mean much. And I do think that there is something to like this industry flying without any kind of credentialing institution, where when I'm feeling like I've got that imposter syndrome, I don't have like a diploma on the wall to point to and go, oh, that's right, I did, you know, I had a, you know, panel of people, you know, pick over my work and say you're good enough and then send me out into the world. No, I was just some, you know, idiot with a fret saw and a tiny hammer, you know, like,
mhm.
so like everybody else in this job. So um, I don't know why I'm holding forth now. You're the one being interviewed, but so do
I
you?
think we should get to the bottom of this. What goes on inside your head, Pete? No, we'll turn the tables. I think that we both have similar responses to these questions, where we'll think these things, the answers will come to us. We will maybe negate our own instincts regarding them. I think longevity is really the only yardstick in this business.
Yeah,
I mean, I know a lot of people who were guitar repair people for 1 or 2 years, people who built guitars for a season or two and then kind of left. But I'm coming up on my 10th anniversary
yeah.
in the fall, 10th of full-time actual, had a business number and everything anniversary. I'm like, okay, 10 years, maybe I'm moving out of, you know, my apprenticeship is over, and maybe I'm moving into journeyman status, that kind of thing.
Well,
But again, there's no real measurement.
no, there isn't. I would say though that you know, to that end, that brings up another interesting question that I had based on watching a Ted Woodford video, which is it does seem like you're stretching out a little bit in project selection. Is that true? Are you taking on projects that just in I guess maybe just in the value of the instrument seems like you're feeling more comfortable taking in some you know higher value stuff. Am I right in noticing that?
It might be comfort, but it might also just be that people understand that I'm here now.
Yeah,
I have a larger pool to draw from in terms of instruments coming my way. There's also, I did make a concerted effort to change the number of instruments I was taking in, just based on the schedule I've set for myself. It wasn't working having seven or eight setups a week. I couldn't do that and
yeah,
make the video at the same time. So it became, maybe I'm not going to do 800 repairs in a year. Maybe it's going to be 200, and maybe they'll be a little bit more advanced, because I've had to come to terms with the fact that I am a content creator as much as I am a repair person. I kind of resisted that for the first few years that the YouTube channel was up and running. But when I look at it that way, I have to provide a certain amount of new kind of content, things that people haven't seen before, that might be more expensive instruments. It could be repairs that take a little bit more effort or time, or stretch techniques that I might not have done before.
yeah,
So for me, it's always been kind of a documentary process rather than a how-to, if you know.
yeah.
So I'm getting people to come along for the ride, right? And if I'm going on a ride, I want to make it interesting for myself. lately that has been bigger repairs, more interesting repairs.
Hey Ted, if you don't mind my asking, the YouTube aspect or the content creator part of it, do you find that that's, for the lack of a better word, influencing your decision making process about what you want to take in terms of the repairs themselves?
It
Like, oh,
does to a
I've showed
certain
a lot of those, so I really don't want to do this one because I've already posted that kind of thing a number of times, or oh, this one would be, nobody's ever seen this, guitar on my YouTube channel before. That kind of stuff.
it does to a certain extent. I think it's hard to say that, but yeah, it does. It affects the choice of instruments I take on. Now, I have a core group of people who I've been working for the last decade. Local musicians, pros, that sort of thing. They have, upgrades and upkeep needs that I'm continuously doing. But if I might get 300 different requests for repair in a month from people who live within 50 to 100 miles. And if there's going to be, 3 or 4 videos I'm going to make during that month, I'm going to pick the most interesting ones to show too. So I do a lot of stuff that doesn't end up on screen. But if someone says, I've got this really weird guitar from 1961, will you do it for me? Yeah, odds are I'm going to take that one on because it'll be more interesting for the audience and for me, which seems antithetical. I don't know. It seems
Well,
weird that I would do that, but it basically follows from what I've been doing.
Ted, I think it's interesting to like kind of separate that from, uh, the fact that you're doing YouTube videos and you're trying to do this in service of YouTube videos, but then you might also just be experiencing this from the standpoint of just a normal repair person that doesn't have time to take on all comers anymore. And,
Pretty
like
much.
I struggle with that too. Like early when I got a lot of projects coming my way, and I thought, this is my job. A person darkens my door with a broken guitar, and by God, they should leave with a fixed guitar. Everybody that comes through the door, and it's just not. It's just it doesn't take long to figure out that it's not sustainable. But
That's okay. Ted keeps me busy when he's got overflow.
oh, that's good.
I do try to send, if I have a number of people in town here who I'll send instruments to, excuse me, if I can't take them. Oftentimes they can't take them because, I don't want to send work to someone I haven't vetted or at least seen their work. Um, but yeah, no, I think getting more and larger and interesting jobs is part of the procedure. The thing I struggle with is those jobs take a longer time to film as well.
Yeah.
So because I have this slightly arbitrary but set in stone schedule for myself where I release a video every week uh, to appease the algorithm as much as the people who are watching, I have to sort of pace myself as well and see if I can kind of fit these things into the schedule in such a way that I can both film them and have a video ready every week. This week it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be Tuesday or Wednesday before I put a video out, and that will affect my bottom line in terms of viewerships and rates and sort of the number of people watching. So the revenue will be lower this week simply because I didn't have a video out on Saturday or Sunday. It's weird that way.
Um, I want to talk to you about uh, also. I watched a lot of, or at one point, I watched a lot of YouTube woodworkers, um, and it always seemed like uh, it's kind of followed this arc. Hey, I'm into woodworking now, and here's me making a birdhouse, and then they get sent free tools by Ryobi, and then they're like, hey, look at me make this thing with my Ryobi tools to put my Ryobi tools on the wall and store them nicely.
Mm-hmm.
And then they keep going, and then pretty soon it's like, hey, look at this, I've just made myself a cabinet shop. Uh, I wonder if I should go into business making cabinets or whatever. And it's like, seems to be like the woodworking channels seem to taper off after they make their own cabinet shop. But your shop remains largely intact. Has nobody offered to outfit you with like things with laser rangefinders and widget widgets stacked upon widgets and stuff like that, or are you just not into that kind of ecosystem of showing free tools for the sake of showing free tools?
Yeah, I never got into it. I tried, I thought about it, but it wasn't going to work for me. I do receive sponsorship requests from some pretty shady sounding websites,
Uh,
as well as some big names, which I do use their tools, but I don't take it on. I couldn't. I just don't know why. But you know, I I'm very aware of the kind of lifespan of the average YouTube channel that's based in a craft discipline. And it's exactly like you described. You start off with someone who is, hey, look what I'm doing. Then they get into, well, let's do some projects. And then it's the sponsorships come in. And then gradually over time, they seem to produce fewer and fewer videos. And then eventually they're off doing something else. And, I realize that there's kind of like a limit to the audience's um, sort of willingness to watch you do things, right? And I've always figured that if I just stuck to what I was doing on a particular day, showing what I was working on, that was going to interest a number of people. I've noticed that if I get into longer projects, multi-week episodes, the viewership declines. People will watch the first video and then maybe they'll just watch other things for a few weeks until the final video. So that's sort of me working on producing content that people aren't going to watch.
yeah.
I hope this whole content discussion isn't like boring to people who aren't into this stuff, because I think it would be the most uninteresting thing for me to listen to if I wasn't into it.
Well,
So
so
we can talk about other stuff too.
we certainly can, and we'll anybody's free to ask Ted about guitar repair, but for all intents and purposes, TL, the Luth group is a lot of Instagram people, and everybody is in some form or another kind of making content in some way, whether it's just sharing pictures of your stuff, and then it's nice when you get you get some views and you wonder why you got some views. um, I just had something go viral, and it was me bending a guitar string with a broken headstock, so the headstock was flopping back and forth. That's what people want to see, and a dog howling in the background. But get
Dave,
it?
could I ask you a question about content?
See,
Sure.
see.
I wanted to ask you about how you deal with repairs and filming and editing and balancing that with family life, because I really struggle with doing it all and finding balance, and I just rather hang out with my wife than sit in a room by myself editing
I
a
don't know
video.
if you noticed this, Ted, but Bo's got a giant softbox behind him. So
I did, yes, yeah. I was thinking about that. Well, noticing you sort of ramp up your number of appearances and the content that Bo has been creating in the last year or two, and I was thinking, boy, he's pushing hard. And it's the same way. I don't like this is not the lifestyle for a person who is sane. It
Yeah.
really isn't.
yeah,
You can't do this and be completely balanced mentally. I mean, I've heard Evan talk previously about burning out in the midst of a career and looking to find ways to reintroduce that balance into your life. For me, I don't have kids. Got a wife who's very, um, supportive of what I do, and it's just me working till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and getting very little sleep.
Mm.
So it's not sane. It's not something I would suggest anyone try to do unless this is a passion of yours and that's what you have to do. It's the same thing with Luthery as a business. It's not a reasonable business in a lot of senses. The return for your time is usually not there, but we do it anyway, right? So this is kind of an extension of that. It could be workaholism. It could just be a passion. It could just be me doing what I'm doing. I don't know.
you know,
I don't know if there is an answer to that.
Bo, and thinking about Ted, you're largely making the same style of video that you made uh, when you first started, right? One camera like pointed down the project and kind of like you're editing in the camera, right? You're moving the camera to the project and just kind of starting and stopping. Not a lot of,
Mhm.
but Bo, you're like all in on kind of like the filmmaker prospect of the thing. Nice, like really
Well,
getting it.
I had all this stuff for taking still pictures and sound samples of my custom made instruments when I finished them. And so I already had all that there. And then I just bolted it to the ceiling in my workshop. So it's just convenient.
But you are having fun with the creative aspect of making videos. Like you want to push the form of videos in your own world, don't you? I know I do. Like I enjoy.
Yeah. I was making since 2003 building, and in the last 4 or 5 years have I got into repair work, and it sort of coincided with YouTube and stuff. So it's all new and exciting and fun. And I've always liked film and stuff. So
Yeah, and
so I
chest
don't
hair apparently.
yeah.
I love that stuff. I love that you're free in the videos in a way that I probably wouldn't be, but I'm
Yeah,
a little jealous of. But
I don't. I only make about $40 a month from my YouTube videos, so it's completely. I think not knowing Ted's financial thing, that it doesn't play any part in my decision making in what I do. So yeah, I was just interested in how Ted balances it all. That's my hardest part.
Ted, I also wanted to ask you, like the business. So you've been a businessman for 10 years now in the trade of guitar repair. How are you feeling about that? Like, can you maybe is it possible to separate the YouTube thing? Probably not. But do you think that you'd be loving the job, uh, like even without the YouTube thing, or?
I probably would. You know, I think if I wasn't doing the YouTube, I might push into building a little bit more,
Yeah.
which is difficult for me these days. I got into this thinking I was going to be a builder, and I looked around at the atmosphere and said, you know what? There are a whole lot of broken guitars out there, and the big companies are continuously making new guitars to replace the ones that are still just fine. Like every 1999 Strat is still potentially still out there, playable. It needs a little bit of work. Maybe that's something to do. So, it started off as kind of a sideline, and then went into, it just fell into my lap. So the YouTube was the same way. And it does, it's basically half of my income these days. So it is an important thing to think of. And I'm also acutely aware that it could go away at any time.
Yeah.
Ian once mentioned that it would be sort of like a nice little nest egg to have in the future. And I thought, well, that's a great thing to think about. But the videos that are more than a month or two old, the returns are really, really low,
Yeah.
like 60, 70, 80 cents. So they'll still be there. They'll still be making a little bit of money. But the other thing is it's a platform itself that could go away,
Yeah.
or terms of service could change,
Yeah.
or,
They could just,
dealing with being a foreigner being paid by an American company too. I'm paying American taxes now and that sort of thing. So yeah, you gotta sort of, I'm ready for it to go away whenever it goes away. It won't be a surprise to me,
and
if that makes any sense.
I think like in terms of like solidifying your career though, I mean that they'll never be able to take that away from you. You've already got probably, I would imagine, as much work as you could possibly do for the remainder of your life, and you're a young man, so like
It's intrusive. I'm going to be honest. The number of requests that I get takes way more of my day than I would like it to.
what's that?
A lot of people from various places, New Mexico. For some reason, anyone who has a guitar in New Mexico wants to ship it to Canada to have me fix it.
Okay.
So and that's me 12, 13 times a day explaining gently to someone that no, it doesn't make sense for you to send your inexpensive guitar to Canada, because it will cost way more than the guitar is worth. That's looking a gift horse in the mouth, though. I shouldn't be annoyed by the fact that so many people want to have their stuff fixed by me. But it can take 4, 5, 6 hours out of the week just tapping away saying no.
Yeah.
That can get depressing too. It's like you're failing to meet these people's expectations and crushing their hopes and dreams.
Yeah. It is tough. I guess, for people for whom that's tough, you may be engaging in immersion therapy though, because I know that as I've dealt with it more, it's becoming easier to crush a dream. But I don't know, like, I don't know if that's necessarily the best thing. I still try to be polite. I'm never going to turn into one of those people that's just like, I don't have time for you or whatever. I will try to give a referral, and I'll try to, illuminate the fact that there probably is somebody just as good as me, 60 miles away from them, because that's just a fact. There's nothing particularly special about me. Yeah. So
I'm acutely aware of that fact too. I never say I'm the greatest guitar person in the world. No, that's Ian. You're thinking about Ian.
No, there's this guy in France. He's dynamite. But that is like, that's part of the job. And the thing is, I think, like, just becoming successful as a guitar repair person, once again going back to, like, the previous conversation about saying no, or being selective about the projects that you take in, that's just kind of the natural trajectory of anybody in this business. Like, I just think if you're good, you as a resource will become finite. Like, so people that find out that they're finite, they do tend to think, I figured out a way to make myself infinite, which is to bring on help. Have you considered bringing Ted Jr. into the situation, or not Ted Jr., but like like just an employee
in fantasies? Yeah, no, I was going to steal a child and meld him to my image.
You gotta get him young.
It's difficult for me because of my limited space.
Uh-huh.
For a couple of reasons. Number one, I need quiet when I'm doing this filming business. I can't have someone interjecting or being an annoyance.
Mm-hmm.
And number two is just physical space. There is not enough room in my little tiny shop for 2 people, grown people. I mean, I take up most of the room here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of a big guy. The other thing is, I don't know what I would have them do. They could, for instance, look after all of those emails coming in, but at the end of the day, I'm the person who has to say yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be kind of like they would be acting as a filter. And I think that's kind of a crappy way to get into this business, is to be someone's gopher.
A personal assistant, basically.
Yeah. I just, because I work from home, because I work weird hours too, I'm often working very late. Doesn't seem to make sense. I don't make enough to really afford a personal assistant either. I'm getting better at sort of upping my per hour rate and actually charging my per hour rate. But I looked at a while back and I realized that I had this sort of friends and family rate that I was giving people who I'd been working for 10 years or so. I realized that, well, hey, like 50-60% of these people are getting the friends and family rate. I have a whole lot of friends and family, and I need to make more money. So I started consciously adding 10, 15, 20% to the bill that I initially, came up with. And it's, now I'm making sort of a middle-class income. It's like, wow, okay, you can make money at this. But at the same time, I don't think I'm making enough to support another even part-time employee.
Or a larger shop, like it's.
So it would be possible if I changed the entirety of my setup from start to finish. Like if I had a separate shop, I kept reasonable business hours, and had a studio for filming. It could happen, but I'm not sure that's really what I want to do. So
yeah, is your shop attached to is your shop rolled into the rent that you pay for your personal for your personal space, or do you rent commercial real estate for your shop?
I don't know. I own a little house. I managed to buy at the depths of the housing crisis.
Oh, beautiful.
So, I was probably like the last cohort who could afford to buy a house. So I got this little tiny. It was built in the 1880s. I work underground, and the shop space is about 10 feet by 14. And it's just, like if I'm wearing shoes, I've got this much headroom between me and the ceiling.
So you're working barefoot.
Yeah, I am actually today.
That's great. That brings up another point about like taking in all comers is like, where do you store all the guitars at? Like, do you store in the main part of the house, or do you store in the shop?
Yeah, I've got storage space apart from the shop. I've basically commandeered closet space. And I try not to have too many guitars here at one time. I sort of schedule people to drop off the week of their repair so that I'm not trying to house 60, 70, or 100 guitars. That would be, it feels like too much liability to me. Plus,
Yeah.
it's just depressing to see that much work ahead of you. Like, it's nice to be able to see a rack of guitars that I can get through in a week or two.
I will never be happy with the amount of guitars in the house. Like if there's only a few, then it's like, oh my God, nobody loves me. And then if it's a lot, it's like, oh my God, it's too much. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. There's no pleasing me. But the let's see, we got a lot of questions coming in. Scott St. Dennis from the distinguished gentleman from Tennessee wants to know, you want to talk about exhaust?
Do I have an exhaust fan?
Yeah.
For my nitro? I try not to spray nitro. I really do. Or I try to do it outside.
Yeah.
I don't. And that's why I don't do full-scale refinishing very often, because, I am aware of its toxicity.
What about?
I do have fans blowing and stuff, but I don't have an actual exhaust fan. I would love a finishing facility.
Are you even the airbrush? Like, I watched you airbrush. By the way, nice job on that sunburst on that J45. It was really really a tasteful color. It's easy to make those way too red. But so you were airbrushing that without ventilation? Do you have a mask on?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I've got a mask.
Okay.
Yeah. No, air is moving in and out of this little space. I've got 3 or 4 fans. So it's not like I don't have a spray booth, but I do try to get as much air transfer and exchange as possible.
Okay, cool.
But again, I do that very rarely, very rarely.
So I did want to know, we got a couple more things. I just wanted to let you know that one of Elaine says that she really hearts your videos as a resource, and yeah, let's see here. A lot of people saying they are really thankful for. I don't know anybody else is doing quite what you do in terms of like very. I see a lot of pictures on Instagram where people are doing more of the ta-da kind of stuff, where they're like, it was broken and here it's fixed, and they don't show like the process. I think like in some ways your videos are the most honest. I haven't seen you really like have a horrible problem with repair. I'm going to assume that it's because you don't ever have things go horribly wrong. Like me, for instance, I don't ever experience that. So does that not happen at all when you're filming something?
It happens, and I have shown a few that have gone wrong.
Yeah.
Like disastrous neck pulling. I did one last year where I was trying to pull the neck off a Japanese guitar from the 70s, and it had some kind of weird neck joint. And it really, I basically bungled it to the point where I had to make the guy a new neck.
Uh-huh.
So I did that.
Wow.
And, I'm always very like, things could go wrong when we do this,
Yeah.
And so I hope it's not too much of a surprise. But the things, I've had that one last year again where there was a Gibson ES thin line that had some weird cross grain. It's almost like someone put a domino on the heel underneath the dovetail that was wider than the dovetail. And that neck came apart in really, really nasty fashion. I mean, it was an ugly looking repair. But again, I was presenting it. That's the good thing about showing the repair as it's happening, is that people are running into these these things as at the same time that you are. So they're along for the journey. They can see what's going wrong rather than, oh, he completely bungled it and then he fixed it. It's like, oh, he was doing what he thought was the right thing. Things did not go that
Yeah.
way. So there was an amendment, and then this is how we repair something that breaks as we're fixing it. That kind of thing.
You know, that getting back to the kind of the YouTube comment stuff. I mean, it's very easy. Like once you watch somebody else putt to know which way the green's breaking. Do you get a lot of that? Like where if you are documenting something and something kind of doesn't go, people get in there with their kind of know-it-all. Like, well, I mean, obviously you should have been able to tell that was going to go that way because of, you know.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
There are people who are on YouTube specifically for that, the ability for them to do that, the kind
Yeah.
of second guess an armchair. And, to get back to a previous question, I really don't read the comments
Yeah.
at this point. I found at a certain point, there was way much more chaff than there was grain. And it was taking up way too much time trying to get through them.
I've read your comments, and I've thought, like, what if I had, because you get a lot of comments. Like a video will have what, like 100 at least, more, maybe more.
Well, more than that.
More than that. So
eventually, I mean, in a month, they could be 700-800 comments.
700 or 800 comments, and I don't know, like, would Ted is the best repairman ever be any more useful than Ted's the worst repairman that ever existed? Like, it seems like there's no winning on reading those anyway. Like,
I mean, the funniest thing is a video in which I specifically said, I just can't read the comments. I don't read the comments, and that video generated 300 or 400 comments. People cannot help themselves, and that's the other side of this whole social media equation, is being able to be on that side.
Yeah.
And recognize that these people can't help themselves. There's the impetus to manipulate them for that. You could. It's too easy to sway these people.
It does.
Or have them.
Yeah, start a cult. Start a Ted Woodford cult, and put on a robe and start spinning away.
I look great in a robe.
Yeah,
I really do. No, I used to sing in a choir, and man, I miss that.
Oh yeah,
should do that for fun.
Robes, the Woodfordians. So that that comment thing, and like kind of the fame thing, like it really brings up those questions, like people that get pictures made with celebrities and stuff. I don't know what it's never, I've seen a celebrity every once in a while, and it never occurs to me to go running up to them and get my picture made with them.
I spent 2.5 minutes with Samuel L. Jackson in a van one time. And no, I wasn't asking about his Kangol hat.
Uh-huh.
This was at a golf course too, so I didn't ask him which way the
I would
greens
ask
were
him
breaking.
about the red violin. Like, how did that work? How'd you get cast in that, buddy?
No. Who would not cast Samuel L. Jackson for the red violin? If you had the opportunity to cast him, you're going to cast him.
It's like
he reads your script and says, "Yes, of course you're on. Doesn't matter. Pick the role."
His body language for like inspecting valuable violins was just so like, I don't know. It looked like he was handling a gun, no matter what. Like it just did not look like a violin appraiser. But anyway, so tell me about the van ride with Samuel L. Jackson and how this all shook out.
Some things I shouldn't talk about.
Okay.
He imparted wisdom to me that I can't give you.
Oh, okay.
You're not ready.
Yeah.
No, I used to work at a golf course during the summer. It was a pretty fancy golf course, and he was there filming a movie in Toronto. I don't know what it was, and he wanted to play golf, so he came to the golf course, played around, gave him a ride in the van back to the parking lot,
Uh-huh.
and that was it. So.
Oh, okay.
He was very cordial, very nice.
So it's not one of those stories where you guys went out and robbed a bank or anything like that. It was just strictly transportation related to golfing activities. Okay, I see. I see.
Much.
Do you have any better stories than that? I'm just kidding. That's a
I
good
don't know, but
one.
back to the fame thing. People who are in my profession and I meet them for the first time and they do the whole "we're not worthy" thing
Uh,
completely blew my mind the first time that happened.
yeah,
Uh, Deeply, deeply uncomfortable.
yeah.
That's a sensation that, dude, we're the same in so many ways. I'm, yeah, that I still don't know how to respond to that.
I gotta say, I talk a big game about not getting my picture made with celebrities, but when I met Frank Ford, like I totally I had a little meltdown. Like it was, yeah, it was some real, wide-eyed. Look at this guy. I'm in the same room as this guy. Look at me, Frank. Can I get my picture made with you? Like, um, so yeah, that it must, yeah, that I don't know, I don't know. So I suppose a fella gets used to it though, and yeah, you parlay it into
I
some kind
hope
of
not.
like robe wearing cult, like it could be good for you, Ted. Like,
Good.
um, so speaking of fame, I just, uh, I love the Adam Savage tested stuff. I love it when he goes through all of the old kind of MythBusters thing. And then I noticed uh, there was some cross pollination the other day. I saw him unboxing a guitar, and he's like, my good friend Ted worked on this for me. And then I was like, son of a gun, I went over to your channel, and sure enough, there was that guitar on your channel. That's got to be pretty fun.
Yeah, that was fun. Adam started watching my stuff a few years ago and kind of reached out and said, "Hi, really like your stuff." I said, "Like your stuff too." So yeah, we email back and forth every once in a while. And I broke my rule about taking on American guitar repairs
Mm-hmm.
because he was insistent.
Yeah.
And I figured he wouldn't mind if it got broken or damaged in transit, you know, because it was just, a $400 guitar.
Yeah.
And I said, you do have all of the acumen and the electronics ability to do this yourself. Come on, mister, I've seen you.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, but no, let's do this. So I said, okay, we'll do it.
I liked that he did do some of his own stuff in the video though. He made like a truss rod cover and stuff. I thought it was like, there for anybody that hasn't watched the Adam Savage tested channel. There's a lot of stuff in there that I'm like, oh, he did a whole thing on like LED light panels that I was like, son of a gun, I gotta look into that. But there's a lot of good like stuff that you can use in Lutherie on that on that channel, it seems. And also some, getting back to the philosophical stuff, he really has some dynamite takes on working psychology and that kind of stuff. You guys ever jibber jabber about that stuff? Does he ever like?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Um, we talked about having parents with dementia while still trying to maintain a career, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Just a little bit about the nature of life and the nature of work and what it means to be, in his case, a maker, in my case, a fixer.
Yeah.
So no, he is definitely full of those ideas, and I think he is very much the way he appears on screen. There's no filter there. He is who he is, and I'd like to hope that I'm the same way, that in that I try to present a lot of the interior monologue as well.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to create a facade. It's not, hey, everybody, come on.
Yeah.
It's just me.
The yeah, I get that. The other thing too is he might be a good resource for navigating that, because I'm sure he must deal with the same thing, which is I'm sure he, loves interacting with people, and then there's probably he's had to define limits for it.
Oh, exponentially more so,
Yeah.
though. I mean, he's worldwide famous from in a way that I would never, I would never want, for one thing, but would never hope to achieve. And yeah, no, he has a certain way of dealing with people where he is very much leaning into them and saying, yes, this is a good experience no matter what's happening. They're meeting a hero. They're encountering, someone that they've idolized. And that doesn't have to be a distancing kind of phenomenon for him, where he can lean into that, and whatever amount of time he has with someone, be it 2 minutes or 5 minutes or an hour, he's going to make that as good an exchange as he could possibly do. It is very inspirational.
Yeah,
is probably the best word.
yeah, he seems like a good role model in a lot of ways. Yeah.
I'm far more crotchety. I'm definitely a curmudgeon
Yeah.
in a way that Adam isn't. So,
well, he doesn't have guitar people as his customers. Like that's still like a lot of your stuff, and like I'm wondering, does your situation, does anybody try to pull that? Can you hear that nonsense with you, or do you just like look at him and go, look here, I'm Ted Woodford, you know who you're talking to here? Come on. Do you pull that on people?
I don't think I've ever done that.
No. You have any idea
I
who
don't
the hell
think
you're
so.
talking to here with your can you hear that? Can you hear that?
No.
No? Okay. Well,
I
go ahead and use it if you want.
I could try that, but I think I have other ways of getting around the situation. You may be hearing something that I can't. That's fascinating. Let's talk about that. But no, it happens occasionally. There are people who have psychosomatic issues with hearing certain pinging noises or a kind of harmonic buzz that's occurring only when they hit one particular string. And as far as I've been tested, I've got really good hearing. So it's probably not me. It's probably something going on in their head. But you can't really bring that up and say that to their face, right? Like in no responsible way could a person in our position say, hey, you just something wrong with your head, buddy.
Oh, I wanted to.
You're hearing
So
things.
you want to give us a example of the Ted Woodford customer Aikido stuff? Do you have any good things that you kind of have used a couple times and you're like, this is what I'm sticking with in terms of like dealing with these situations?
I will say that anything I say here is probably learned from Evan Gluck's various opining.
Oh, thank you, Ted.
Yeah, no, I was in I was in the audience in the one of the JAL things. Evan and I actually had to tell each other what we hated about our customers as part of an exercise that he was doing.
Oh, did I?
Because I was the only one who didn't have a partner.
Oh my God, Ted, that was you?
That was me.
That was you, Ted. Holy shit. I am so happy about that.
See, I know all about what Evan thinks about his customers.
And nobody else does. Oh, that's amazing, Ted. I didn't realize that was you.
Small world.
Where was this at? Was this in Tacoma, or what was this?
This was in Tacoma, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this was about 8 or 9 years ago.
So you guys did a role play exercise of customer relations, or?
Mm-hmm. Well, Evan was talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what?
It was sort of I'll just talk for 1 second, and then I paired everybody up so that they could talk privately with one other person about the stuff that drove them crazy, and I swore everyone to secrecy.
Okay.
So in other words, nobody could tell what anyone else said, and it just set up a safe space for people to go nuts.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So what did you learn from that exercise, Ted? What was the takeaway from that?
The main thing is to avoid conflict with people who are not sensible.
Yeah.
Specifically, things in an internet like a Yelp or a Google review, that kind of stuff. You can waste your day trying to make a case against some foolish person's, 3-second mindless diatribe against your business, and it does not profit you. But no, there's a lot of that sort of psychological tricks, realizing that someone who is bringing an item to you is relating to it in a way that is not completely rational. These are toys to some people, but they also mean something more. So you just sort of have to look at the person, what they're coming in with, and use that to temper their expectations a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. My process is pretty. Most people are coming to me with some expectation that I can do good work. Like I don't have to do the whole prove yourself thing at this point because they've seen me do what I do. So they have some expectation. That kind of cuts out a lot of the, I don't know, the hemming and hawing. It's just like, I've encountered this problem before. This is what I did then. I'd like to do it again. Do you trust me? And people, by and far and large, will say, yes, do
Yeah.
what you do.
That's
Just
that.
fix it.
That's that 10 years thing that you got going on there. It's
Mhm.
after 10, and you getting any gray in your beard yet? Any gray coming in?
Oh, yeah.
That's helping.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
yeah.
helping a lot too. That cuts down a lot of that nonsense. Um,
It's going to get the Grecian formula.
uh, I when I was younger and I would struggle with customers. I wanted to get some just for old men that would put gray into my beard. That way I would maybe bypass some of that. But the
Touch of gray.
touch of gray. That's right. Uh, so I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about looking to the future. Um, it seems like maybe you don't do that much, but I wanted to see, like, do you have any projects coming up that uh, you're particularly interested in that you took in that you're like, oh boy, this is this has got the
Yeah.
juices flowing.
Well, right now I'm working on a probably 68. This is a Hagstrom Viking 2,
Uh huh.
which someone ostensibly sat upon, breaking this section of top, which was not previously contacting the block underneath. So this is what I'm doing today is I'm basically trying to match this color with the stuff that's going on in the burst. I got to do a little spraying on this. Put some initial color on last night. Um, it's an interesting guitar. The other thing I'm doing today is first one in a long time. This is a 1975 D45.
Yeah.
D45s are so rare in Canada that I've seen three in my lifetime. They just don't appear here. Everyone is too sensible. They all buy the 28. They never buy the 45. Neil Young is the only Canadian who's ever owned a 45. But this one has slightly higher action. I'm going to try and heat treat the neck a little bit because it's not quite in neck reset territory, but it could be. It's got a bit of excess relief. So that's the other thing for today. Long term, I have a couple of projects I'd like to attempt. I'm thinking about doing some building, making a copy of a guitar that I've become synonymous with due to the videos. I had that one video that went viral. It's got like 2 million views now, where I was operating on this sort of slightly obscure Canadian brand called a Hensel
Yeah.
for R.F. Williams, which they're 1930s catalog guitars made with decent materials. Some strange things going on in terms of geometry and measurement. And everyone and his brother has been coming to me with these guitars for the last 5 years, asking me to fix them up. And it's always a huge slog to get them to the point where I'm satisfied. So I'm thinking about making a small run of these things rather than having Hensel on the headstock, it'll say Woodford. So this is kind of a recreation that would fix all of the issues which I've been fixing. There's bracing design issues, and the scale length is never actually lining up with the saddle, that sort of thing. So I'm going to make some 1930s catalog style guitars, I hope, 4 or 5 of them. And ordering some wood and getting some parts together for that.
Any any notion of how you're gonna are these gonna be for sale?
They will be for sale.
Oh.
Yes, I'm not going to keep them around in my own house. No.
I couldn't ever play an instrument that I built. I think it would just be too much me in one spot. But do you have any idea how you're gonna represent them, or are you gonna go through Dream
I don't
Guitars
think
or
it's an issue. Like
yeah?
the 3 people I've mentioned, they're like, okay, I want to buy it.
Uh huh.
Put me on the list. I'm like, maybe I don't want to sell it to you. Maybe
That's
you're not the guy. But no, I mean, I will obviously sort of make them for sale
is
when it
it
happens.
is it gonna be
Might
part of a?
probably film some of this stuff too.
I was gonna say it's gonna be probably part of a video series too. I would think.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't think I would have time to do it without filming it. You know, I have to make the content and I have to make it at the same time.
Is it going to be something, going back to the talk about like too much, not episodic content, but more, arcing story arc content? Are you gonna like intermingle it with other content too? Like maybe take a while to build them, or are you gonna try to bang them out?
Likely. Um, I'll probably try to bang them out and film as much as possible and just do a whole lot of voiceovers rather than speaking at the time. But maybe also talk about bridge design, for instance, or things that sort of diagnose the original instrument, figure out what I don't like about it and how I will change it, that kind of thing, rather than it's got to be episodic, but it won't be, you know, how to build a guitar.
Yeah.
I think there are enough people who are trying to do that. It's a hard slog for a lot of people to watch.
Yeah, it is.
YouTube.
Um, Especially, considering the historical stuff that you do. I think a lot of people, I think that's a lot of it. I think the repair I mean, you get them with something, right? Either they're there for the repair or they're there for the storytelling. We've got a couple questions I wanted to kind of squeeze in really quick. Elaine wants to know, did you ever discover why the epoxy didn't set on that disaster neck? I'm not sure I know.
I went back and I tried a second bout with that epoxy. I mixed up a sample and it worked fine.
Yeah.
And the fact that I managed to film myself using the correct increments for both hardener and resin, I have no idea why it didn't work.
You just got into a weird spot in the batch, maybe, or
it must have been. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was heartbreaking.
That's happened to me a couple times too, but I didn't film myself doing it right, so I just always assumed I did it wrong. KT wants to know, speaking of balance, does Ted make time to actually play, practice, perform music for enjoyment? Do you even like music?
Absolutely not. No. None. It's tuning or nothing.
Yeah.
No, I've been thinking about that recently because up until maybe 5 years ago, I did play a little bit. Yeah, I would go out to an open mic and that kind of thing, do my little folk music stuff. But I am trying to consciously set time aside for more social activities, see a few more concerts, be a little less tied to the shop. Like for instance, next month I'm going to the Fretboard Journals Fretboard Summit, I guess it's called.
I'll see you there then.
Not as a feature attraction, but just to sort of hang around and see what's going on and maybe talk to some people and make that kind of contact. But in terms of playing, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I don't feel a need to play. It's funny.
Pretty guitared out by the end of the day.
I guess so. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard you play in the videos. It seems like you're like a fairly capable fingerstyle guy, a little bit, or is that right?
I used to be much better than I am. That I know for certain.
Uh-huh.
I feel horribly clumsy, and the videos do not, the good stuff. That's the good stuff. It makes it into the video.
Were you a Fahey guy? It almost sounded like a little bit Fahey-ish or something, maybe.
There's some Fahey in there, yeah.
Okay.
Fahey, Paul Simon, all kinds of weird influences.
Hey, does anybody want to pop in and ask some questions? I've been hogging up Ted this whole time, and I know we've got some people excited to say something. And if it wants to if we need to turn it into a mutual admiration thing, we can certainly do that, because I know people definitely they don't get a chance to tell you that they like you as much as they do. So, Evan, do you want to say that you like Ted?
Dude, I am so happy that was you at that talk. I actually talked about that recently, and I was like, I wonder who that guy was. And I literally said that. And I'm just thrilled to death that it was you. So you're awesome.
Scott, say Dennis.
I'm right back at you.
Do you want to ask a question? You had a question earlier. I bet you got more.
I love Ted Woodford videos. But I guess a question for Ian and Ted. I'm a little nervous about doing things like changing the blade on my bandsaw, And I was wondering, is there a YouTube guy that you would recommend that I could watch and do it myself, or should I call someone out here to change it?
Oh, that's.
I'm a when it comes to machinery.
What kind of bandsaw do you have?
I have a Porter cable.
So is it a 14-inch, like a standard old Delta style bandsaw?
Probably, yeah. It's just, I got it at Lowe's for like less than $200.
Okay, I know the one. Ted, do you have an opinion on who's the best for machine maintenance tutorials?
The best bandsaw presentation I ever saw was actually the old Fine Woodworking magazine VHS cassette by a guy called Mark Dujinski. I'm not sure if that's on YouTube now or not, but that was good. There's got to be something, just routine bandsaw maintenance. Changing a blade is frightening the first time you do it. You want to wear safety glasses, obviously, but basically, if you put the new blade on in exactly the same configuration of the old blade, you probably won't go too far wrong. The only way you could really mess it up would be to get the tracking on the upper wheel off to the extent that the blade would want to come off the front of the wheel, which is a slightly dangerous situation. But it probably won't happen. If you look at, a basic bandsaw guide, one of the like Popular Woodworking or Fine Woodworking, there has to be a video on there about changing the blades on a bandsaw. It's not terribly onerous. It's not like changing the blades on an old school jointer, for instance, is far more terrifying.
Just watch the blade that you're using. Just watch the blade that you're using. There's different tensions from half-inch down to a quarter. If it depends on the unit that you have, there should be increment tension guide inside as you're tightening it.
Yeah,
that's always a good thing to remember. Not to interject there, I apologize. But yeah, the guide bearings are the most crucial when you're bringing them in, or else they just kind of skip up when you're aligning the tilt. It's usually the top end, Ted, when the top wheel, depending on the blade that you have, that's the crucial one. That when you spin it, just do it by hand and tension it up so it just stays nice and free and spins true, or else it's just going to kick off on you.
Jeremy has added that you want to make sure that the bandsaw is turned off before you start.
Yeah, unplugged. Safety first. As you can see, I've got my safety glasses cutting on the floor right now.
So the other thing too, Scott, is
for the first couple.
Oh,
yeah, you want to turn it on. I mean, at a certain point, you'll be able to do it with the blade running, but that's for future learning.
Yeah. The other thing too, Scott,
get comfortable with it off.
On the tracking and all that, just get used to like spinning the blade with your finger a bunch. And if it, just watch the tracking, and if it feels like it's moving, then there's usually a wheel at the back, and then just fiddle with that until it stays put. And then once it stays put roughly in the middle of the wheel, actually I think you want it off the center of the wheel depending on what your rubber situation on the wheel is. But once you get it into the right spot, then you just kind of bring the guides to the blade. I forget, that one has friction blocks. It doesn't have like bearings like the right? Like it's
probably got cool blocks or something like that. That's blocks. A lot of information to impart to someone who has never done it before. I think it's probably best for you to watch it done by someone first before listening to all of us.
Yeah.
Trying to give our opinions of what the.
Yeah. So in short, try
to gather some information first for yourself.
There is a really good one on YouTube by Alex Snodgrass. He does an exceptional bandsaw clinic. His name is Alex. Last name is Snodgrass. It's probably the best bandsaw setup I've ever seen. He does some incredible things and a lot of little technique tricks that he shows people.
Yeah.
And it works for like very simple bandsaws or more advanced ones. He does two different types of demo too. It's on YouTube, but it's phenomenal. It's really good, really helpful. I learned a lot from it. I've been using it for a long time, but he stepped up my level of adjusting a bandsaw to another level.
That's cool.
Thank
you, Larry. Anybody else want to jump in and say something to Ted? Say something really nice? Or ask a question? Here comes Miguel.
Me. I don't know if you have talked about this, but this has in my mind for a while. how do you how do you keep work? Because I know there's some work that needs more mind into it than others, but how do you keep on doing it? Because I know sometimes we don't have like the complete mindset for something that happens in our regular life. But how do you pump yourself up to work in those days?
Well, that's
That is a really important question. Um, for me, it involves scheduling. If I find a job that I know is going to require a lot of attention and I'm going to be sort of out on the edge of my skill set, I'll schedule that for later in the day when I'm fully awake and I'm at my best. Like I've found that I work probably I'm at my best between 8 and 12 midnight. So
Okay.
that's when I'll do those jobs. If it's a setup that is routine and I know it's going to be fine, that's a morning time kind of job for me. But beyond that, it's just self-motivating. It's a strange kind of thing, but if you're drawn to this sort of work, you're probably already pretty good at self-motivating. So you just sort of, you get on with it. You realize that there are going to be times when you're not feeling your best, and you
Mhm.
just sort of put that out of your head and grit your teeth, focus, and do it. It's like someone asking, how do you carve that neck without, a guideline or something? It's just, well, you just don't cut into an area that you don't want to cut.
Yeah.
That's it's all about, it's mental. It's 90% mental.
Do you ever?
But I think you probably already know. Sorry, did you want to say
Oh,
something?
I was just go ahead and finish. I can. I'll remember it and ask you after you get done finishing your statement.
I think I'm finished.
Oh, okay. It said you think he already knows, but that's all right.
Oh, I think he already understands this, probably intuitively.
Do you ever like?
How do you?
You
Oh
ever?
yeah, but we all have like different mindsets into approaching different things, different times.
Do you?
So I want to know how you approach that
Do you ever do
matter.
like a check when you walk into the shop and you just go, you know what? I don't have it today. Like I'm not feeling right, and I need to like find something else to do, or maybe, or are you ready to
That
lose?
sort of
Are
that
you ready to
rarely
lose?
happens because I find that rarely happens to me because there's always enough things to do that I can find something I can focus on at my level at that of capability.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I don't usually have a problem focusing. But to get back to it, it's about self-analysis and understanding these things about yourself and how you can fit your own mental patterns into your work. I think we all adapt to it in our own ways. And
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, as a group, Luths tend to be pretty interesting thinkers. I think a lot of us are, I'm not going to say atypical, but we have special things about our thinking that allows us to do this sort of work. And by the same extent, we have to kind of figure what those things are that make us individual and tailor our work to um, capitalize on those differences, if that makes sense.
It does to me. Um, the that thing about the strengths and weaknesses and the self-reflecting until you kind of understand what those may or may not be. It's really interesting. It's it's quite a process, and what what I think is interesting also about Luthery, unlike some other jobs, is it tends to lay it bare for you too. Like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Or in some cases it could be you get in over your head on stuff, but then on other cases you wind up finding out maybe you're just a little bit of being a little bit of a wiener about taking on something that you could do, but maybe you're a little afraid of. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so some of that some of that self growth or whatever I think is interesting in this job.
It goes both ways. You can be a wiener about it, but you can definitely get in over your head. Somehow you have to temper if you're the kind of person who does that continually, you got to sort of be able to put the brakes on and analyze that situation and why does this keep happening to me?
Yeah,
And maybe go back to a more incremental kind of growth in the sort of complexity of the jobs that you're taking on.
yeah, it's interesting. You know there were no Ted Woodford videos when I was coming up, and so I have this whole section of my career that was basically grip and rip. Like you didn't know what you didn't know, and you were just like kind of making it up on the in the spur of the moment, like, and so like that self reflection where you go, especially I tell people all the time with like touch up, like when somebody says this is pretty good, but I'm thinking about trying it over, and I'm like, well, do you have a clear vision of what you would do differently than what you did this last time? Because what you have now is functional, and coming up with that like was like, I don't know, like it's like I still don't practice it either all the time. I'll like speculatively pull stuff off. Oh, I'm Ian. I can figure out something better than this. Let's just sand that off. But that, I'm wondering if do you feel like that we're moving out of the phase of the grip and rip? Do we have as a trade like some techniques that are some are better than others, and some are going away, and we're kind of like almost like in the violin world, kind of honing in on what a sound post patch looks like or something like that?
You would hope, wouldn't you? I think at this stage, you and I are sort of in that weird transitional time between there was absolutely no information, and now there is so much information that a person could get too much.
Yeah.
And I think there is a difference in attitude between those of us who learned at a time when resources weren't available and the people who are coming up now, who will sometimes second guess their own um, sort of intuitive curiosity about what they can do. They have to watch someone do something before they'll attempt it, which is a luxury that we didn't have.
Yeah, that.
The first time I did a neck reset, I had never seen it done before. I've heard it, described, and I read about it in an article.
Yeah.
So I had, a bare amount of information. There is so much information now that the thing that kind of drives me crazy is when people will ask questions of someone who's, sort of technically advanced at something when the information is readily available. I mean, you don't want to say, hey, I'm not Google. Why don't you go and look it up for yourself? Because at this point, it's quite possible for them to do that. I don't want to be dismissive, but at the same time, hey, if you're going to do this, you've got to be able to rely on your own sense of what's possible, given your set of circumstances, your history, the things that you've encountered previously. You might not be ready to do a neck reset. I can't tell you that because I don't know you well enough.
Yeah, I think that's right.
What you're saying there, it's like I have seen James Gay commented on people posts on Facebook groups. They are asking the simplest questions to be solved, and what James answers is what have always get into my mind. It is, if you don't have the enough encouragement for you to look up and search for the information or what's it's logical to your mind to fix that, you better don't do this anymore because you don't have the attitude enough to be this, and that's the perfect example.
Exactly.
It does seem like, asking those questions is almost like it's almost like guitar pedals or something. Like that's not what the guitar pedal is not what's standing between you. The right guitar pedal is not what's standing between you and rock stardom. It's that you're not practicing, and like you can ask all the questions in the world, but until you decide to make that first cut, those questions, there's no amount of questions that you can ask that are going to prepare you for that, to do the cut for you, but yeah, it's very interesting. Like I was telling somebody that it seems like we're at this weird space where like all of this information is available, and yet the average person's ability to use the information is plummeting because they just do not operate in the third dimension anymore. Like they're just like, they didn't come up swinging a hammer and, on grandpa's fence or something, and it's just like that like, yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
It feels like there's a generation that sort of missed out on a lot of that kind of handiwork the sort of physical problem solving that was like when I was in high school, there was no shop class
Yeah.
in my high school. They even got rid of visual art for my last year of high school because it was budget cuts or something. So, there's a lot of people who missed out on very basic kind of motor. Um, they're missing some neurons somewhere.
Yeah.
And the use of technology to provide so much information at their fingertips without them having to parse the information for themselves. You get a how to rather than a collection of information from which you develop your own process. A lot of people seem to be missing that part of the equation. And it's one thing, I mean, I often think like you'll get interesting questions being the facilitator or moderator of a Lutherie group. I get the general public and people who have never done any kind of woodworking before
Yeah.
asking me how to do major modifications on a Strat. And it's like, what tools should I buy? And it's like, dude, if you have, no, you have to go back 12 years at this point and learn about the tools and what the tools do before you take them to your Strat. And it's disappointing in some ways. I don't like that idea that someone has to ask me those kind of questions because I think it's a shame. I think that people should have a little bit more curiosity about making stuff in that way.
It it's true, and I don't know what like I don't know if it's something that we can take on, start a foundation or something to to get people doing it. You know what? Getting back or maybe expanding on this a little bit. When I watched Dan, and the way his mind works on repairs and how unique his approaches are, it occurred to me in watching it sometime that there's a real the way he does stuff is a relationship with the third dimension that I think used to be passed down generationally with just these little tricks, just like these little tricks that a grandpa had for fixing something, and it just like, like it's just like this simple manipulation, and it just passed down through generations, and somehow, probably with my dumb generation, that that played too much Atari 2600, that it seems like that communication generationally got severed somehow. But yeah, I don't know.
Could also be regional too.
Yeah.
I think there's certain areas of the country where it's a little bit more likely that you'll have picked up some of these skills versus people who have never seen, there are people who've never hammered a nail.
Yeah.
Ever.
It's tough too. I remember when I was a kid thinking, hey, hammer, nail, this seems reasonable. And then you bend a few over and you're like, oh, all right. Well, I guess I'll take some time to figure this out.
I will say that the number of people who say, and the number of people in our trade who say, oh, I got this from my grandpa, oh, this is from my grandpa's tool collection, oh, my grandpa taught me this, definitely suggests a generational divide in knowledge of the third dimension.
Yeah.
I didn't know either of my grandparents or grandfathers, so I have no excuse. Okay. I think the information is still out there. It's just your ability to gather it in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can autodidact that stuff too. Like you can choose to, hammer nails, and you can choose to cut things and make birdhouses and build those hand-eye coordination skills from the ground up if you choose to.
I didn't have a chance to play sports. My dad sports was teaching me how to measure and cut. My dad was a carpenter, actually a master carpenter, and he's in his 90s now. So whoever saw those pictures with my dad in the shop, 90, still swinging a hammer. He still loves what he does.
Yeah.
So I'm blessed that I didn't, I guess, play the video games, or I never had the opportunity. I guess I got to learn how to use a hammer as a kid. It helped.
I bet you're terrible at video games.
I hate video games. See? Absolutely hate them.
Well.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for Ted, or want to make observations on how young people suck and they don't know how good it was in the days of yore? Bo, do you have any hatred for young people? And their phones? They're always looking at their phones. You notice that? Always with the phones.
I saw an interview with Christopher Nolan, the director, this morning. He doesn't have a phone at all. He said it distracts from his creative process, which I found interesting. I did have another boring editing question though, Ted. Sorry.
Let's talk about editing. I like this.
Can you sort of outline a typical day with repair and filming and then editing? Do you film in the day and then edit at night or the same day, or do you just do a whole bulk edit?
It depends from project to project and what I'm doing during the week. Oftentimes my edits, I consider them, editing time is like downtime for me. So I might work for 2 or 3 hours, then stop for half an hour, put some things on the computer and, try to get them in position so that I'm not like jumping up and down at 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday night, trying to get things finished, which happens quite often anyway. But no, I do try to break it up. I find I do have to get into a bit of a flow state. I've mentioned this before, but I try to edit to a kind of rhythm or a beat so that the cuts will happen in accordance with a kind of musical idea when I'm editing. Not that there's a soundtrack, but it's just sort of, it flows in the way that I think music flows. So I need to kind of get myself into the rhythm to do it. But beyond that, I don't really have any set editing times or parameters beyond just, well, it's got to get done sometime, so let's sit down and do a bit of editing.
I find editing is kind of like, is almost like cleaning, where it's very difficult to get started, but once it's going, I actually kind of like it. Like, I don't know what it is, but I do enjoy editing. Do you actually enjoy the process once you're in it?
I do. Yeah. It takes me a while to warm up for voiceovers because I tend to be quite sort of, I don't know, I get a tripped up tongue when I'm doing voiceovers.
Yeah. And
it takes me 3 or 4 minutes for that kind of back and forth thing to try and get myself into the point where I'm actually, even saying this, I'm running into it, where I'm letting the thoughts out smoothly.
Yeah. Do you like?
There are times when I'm not so elegant.
The last time I was doing voiceover, and it really, I don't know what it is about the headspace or something, but sometimes I'll actually have to like type out like what I'm gonna say, and then I have to say it one sentence at a time, and then knit it together in the software. And sometimes I can just like, I don't care, whatever happens. I don't know how much of that's like, in those times of hyper self-criticism or something, or what, but like it seems very, very different headspaces that I get into when sometimes it works.
Yeah, no, mindset means a whole lot. Like, or if I'm tired, definitely I'm probably writing things out and reciting from a page rather than just letting it flow freely. I'm not that reliable.
Yeah.
So it ends up being an efficiency more than anything. Like if you're so tired that your tongue is twisted, then reading it is the quicker way to do it, which in some ways is the best way, right? Because I don't want to spend half an hour trying to produce 4 minutes of dialogue.
Getting angrier and angrier and like, why can't I do this? Maybe you don't experience that. That's something I get.
Oh no,
frustrated with that.
There's a lot of swearing that I cut out. A lot of cussing.
Last time we talked to you, you were using, I believe, just whatever the editor that comes stock with Windows is. Is that still your main weapon of choice?
The problem is I had to get a new computer because my computer, which was 12 years old,
yeah,
decided to die.
Yeah.
And that software is no longer available, and I couldn't transfer it over to, like, it wasn't going to work with Windows 10.
Yeah. How long did you spend trying to make it work?
Oh, too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually found like sort of freeware downloads that were supposed to be like a clone, and no, it just wasn't working. So I had to go and buy myself this suite of editing software, which was like $79. So yeah, I hit the big time. There are far too many options available with it. I can't even remember what it's called now, but I managed to get it to the point where it works like the old stuff, so I'm happy.
Okay, yeah. It's funny. I wound up getting started with DaVinci Resolve. No, I started off with iMovie, I think, and then I switched to DaVinci Resolve because my MacBook was horribly underpowered, and it's the same thing. It's like it's easy enough to use once you wade past the 1,000 buttons that you'll never use ever, and probably nobody ever uses. I don't know why they don't just make a child's version of these software suites. Like, just can I get 5 buttons, please?
Well, that's the thing. I discovered that I somehow had signed up for uh, a paid function for some of these features that I wasn't using. It was like it was part of the contract that you don't really understand until the credit card bill comes in and hey, there's a rebill on here. What's this all about? And it was for things that I was never going to use. So, I dropped all of these filters and plugins and stuff to make you look like you have cat's ears and all that stuff.
That doesn't come up as much as you might think in a Lutherie video, does it?
No, never once.
Cool.
I had a quick question for both Ted and Bo, if that's all right.
Well, if you include me in it, then it's all right.
Oh yeah, Ian. I don't know if it applies. I've just been thinking about live streaming a lot. When I look at editing as like adding it to my workday as somebody who wants to play a whole lot, it just doesn't add up. But live streaming, if you had kind of like an organized way to inhabit your space and go through your work, if that was ever a thought for either you or anybody here, of just doing a basic live stream of the shop versus trying to capture an exact process every single job, you could just have a VOD and a highlight of times to be like, this is when I addressed this issue and things like that. I just didn't know if it was ever a consideration.
Do you want to go first, Bo?
I'm too messy and I'm too unorganized, and I take a long time to think about my answers, and I'm boring to listen to. So live streams aren't for me. I need to edit myself, and it's one of the reasons why I hate editing, because I have to listen to myself, and it's just terrible.
You got a handsome voice. You've got the voice of a much more handsome man, Bo.
I don't have that honey Woodford though.
Oh yeah, he's smooth.
No, I like those voices.
He's real smooth.
We should switch.
That's like Canadian bacon. That is hot.
Ted, you ever thought about? You must have live streamed once or twice, right? Just for fun.
I have never live streamed, and the reason why I wouldn't is because I have never voluntarily watched a live stream.
Yeah.
I can't. It's just there's too much dead air. I'm the kind of person who watches a lot of YouTube videos on 1.5 speed.
Yeah.
Because I want to get it into me without having to watch someone, unbox a tool for 3 minutes, and then, forgot something. I got to go to the other room. Hold on here, guys. Comes back 4 minutes later with a coffee. I can't do it. I wouldn't want to watch it. It's not the kind of stuff that I would want to produce.
On the 1.5.
Not against anyone who does it that way. I understand there are people who do and they have an audience for it, but it's just like, that's not me.
Yeah. I will say on the live, my answer for that is you are actually, everybody right now is on the original or the second version of the Luth-Along, which was originally a live YouTube stream that I started during the pandemic to kind of kick things off. So yes, I thought for sure a live YouTube stream of somebody luthing in their basement was going to be infinitely fascinating for the world, and it turned out to be fascinating for about 12 people. So as a financial prospect, it wasn't great, but retooled into the Luth-Along and retooled into interviews and stuff like that, and live scripted demoed presentations where people could ask questions live. It worked out pretty well, but I think a long, rambling 8-hour day of in the shop luthing would be pretty dull even for people interested in the subject matter. So unless you got a lot of real good jokes, which every luthier does.
I'm
They're all
thinking the
real
people who
good.
would be interested. Yeah, I'm thinking the people who would be interested in it would probably be doing something similar themselves.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't actually be watching so much as listening. And there's nothing more boring to listen to than luthing activities.
Yeah.
There's
But
not a lot of sonic input in our day.
it is.
You can listen to whatever I'm listening to on my radio.
Probably hockey, I would imagine.
Never.
No.
Nope. No hockey. No, true crime podcasts
Yeah.
only. Gore. Need gore.
But we get to listen to each other tuning.
That's right.
It's delightful.
Evan playing Baby Shark constantly.
Yeah, Baby Shark.
I was going to say Shram.
Dan, do you have anything you want to ask Ted? You look like
just sitting here enjoying it.
Huh?
You put me in a good mood about Luther.
That seems like that may be Ted's superpower. Putting people in a good mood about Luther.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's actually a very high compliment, actually.
I'm gonna join up there. This is I didn't know you had that.
I'll send
really?
I'll send you Ted's some YouTube videos from Ted, Dan.
No, I'm gonna go look them up right now.
Cool.
You're gonna discover all the times I stole from you, Dan, from VHS tapes,
no
circa 1987.
There is no stealing. I agree with you. I wish that today we still had wood shop in high school and metal shop. It's gone.
It is.
I agree about people that have never used a hammer or want to get a tool that they'll cut their finger off with just to go do the job. I think to be a luthier, guitar builder, whatever it is, you need to be able to wire a light switch in and do all the basics.
That was, I gotta say, so I was supposed to talk to a young fellow today, actually from Greg Guitars about we're gonna do welding for luthiers, because I think for a lot of people those side quests, it's what I think ultimately will make you more successful in business if you know those things, like wiring up a light switch and like doing all that stuff that isn't guitar related but your shop is going to need, or your space is going to need. So,
or buy a really nice old tool that needs to be taken apart and rebuilt, and then you have a beautiful old Rockwell something or other, and you made it happen, but you had to learn about bearings and plugs and things you never knew about, and all the tools that go with it.
That learning to learn thing, it's very interesting, like that ability to put one foot in front of the other, and looking back on it, and things that really prohibited me from taking learning seriously was just that fear of failure. Like, what if I buy that machine and I take it apart and I can't put it back together again? Boy, everybody'd laugh at me then, right? Who cares,
You go to see Adam Savage.
That's right. That guy does rebuild some machines. He's a pretty impressive cat. But
I would love to see a Luth along with some welding stuff.
We're gonna get it. It's happening. So,
especially if it was gas welding and just brazing, things like that.
Yeah, it would be good.
Not the total vice guy. That was funny when you asked him that question. That welding.
What was it? Did he say welding was too complicated for us guys? Like
you asked if you'd like to do some welding tutorial.
Oh, that's right.
No.
Yeah, very, very simple, like one word answer. No. So, all right. Well, Ted, should I let you get back to editing and all that kind of stuff?
Good. No, this has been great, though.
Ted,
actual social input from other people in the business.
I really enjoy this, and we need to do another Council of Elders, and I want to reach out to you about getting you back on the council, because that last one we did together. I just like the way you get in there. So everybody, you want to unmute and give a
Thanks, Ted.
warm.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks, neighbor.
Come again.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Dan.
Hi, Dan.